Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about fixing the main reason that you're losing your audience. The main reason that most people lose their audience is because they're talking too much. Gay Hendricks once said that everything that is important can be expressed in one or two breaths. I would add to that everything that is important should be expressed in one or two breaths. Not one or two paragraphs, not one or 2 hours, not 15 or 20 sentences in one or two breaths. And one of the main reasons that you're losing your audience is because you're just talking too much. And this is a problem because the impact on our listeners is profound. If you're talking too much, you're probably losing sales. I remember recently we had a window salesman come up to our house because we needed some new windows put in. I had already done my research. I knew that I wanted to hire this company. I knew that this company did really good work. The windows were very good quality. The warranty was very, very good. So I already knew that I was going to buy, and I already knew that I wanted these windows. So we called the company up, and they sent a salesman to our house. He sat down with my wife and me, and in 30 minutes, he had me. He answered all my questions. He talked about the things that were important to me. I was ready to sign on the dotted line. The problem is that he continued to sell and continued to talk for 3 hours. Now, we ended up buying anyway, but I got to tell you that towards the end, I was just ready to get him out of my house. And if I hadn't already been convinced that I wanted to buy something, he would not have been my salesman. I would not have bought from him. The reason? He talked too much. And so we lose sales. A lot of times we lose attention. I remember going to a conference this year, and I was in a breakout session that interested me. And so I was sitting in the third row, and the session started, and the presenters, there were two of them, talked for 75 minutes about something. And I'm saying that because by the time we got to the end of it, I didn't know what they were talking about. I didn't know what the point was. I didn't know how any of this was relevant to me. They took 75 minutes to say a bunch of words, but they missed what was important that could have been said in one or two breaths. A lot of times we're losing notice. I used to work at a very big company. I was a mid-level manager at a Fortune 50 company. And I noticed that some of my colleagues would send emails to an executive with important information in it. And this email would be 6 or 8 paragraphs long, containing all the details and the data and reasoning behind whatever it was that was important. And because the person who sent the email buried the headline somewhere in the email and didn't make it clear what he was really trying to say, the executive deleted the email and didn't take the time to read it. Most executives don't want to be bothered having to dig through all of your words to try to figure out what you're trying to say. So all that to say, the reason that you're losing your audience is probably because you're talking too much. So today I want to give you 10 reasons you might be talking too much in your presentations. Whether you're standing on a stage and talking to a large audience, or whether you're sitting in a boardroom or at a conference table talking to a team of people, or whether you're talking one-on-one with somebody and just trying to share an idea or sell somebody something. Here are 10 things that we do that are mistakes that cause us to talk too much, which is the number one reason you're losing your audience. By the way, if this content is helpful to you, please hit like and subscribe to the channel. Leadership Evolution comes out with videos on a pretty regular basis. And so if you want to be notified of when content like this comes in, I hope that you'll hit that subscribe button. We're trying to grow this channel and be helpful to business leaders like yourself. And so I really appreciate your support that way. So let's talk about the 10 reasons that you are talking too much in your presentations. Number one, you don't know the material. Now, Gay Hendricks again said that everything that is important can be expressed in one or two breaths. And the reason that we don't know what's important and the reason that we can't get to it in one or two breaths is because we haven't done the hard work to really narrow down all of our content into what is really, really important. Most of us are verbal processors. And what that means is we have an idea in our heads, but we can't quite articulate it. And the way that we get to the point where we can articulate it is we talk about it. And the more we talk, the clearer it becomes in our minds, and the clearer it becomes, the more our words become more concise until ultimately we can express what we're thinking and what we're feeling. The problem is a lot of people verbal process in front of their audience because they didn't do the work ahead of time to figure out what the material really is and what it's all really about. So if you don't know the material and you find yourself verbal processing and just talking and talking and talking because you're trying to crystallize some idea in your mind, and if you're doing that in front of your audience, you're going to lose them. So say it clearly, say it succinctly. When you can say something clearly and succinctly, then you know you understand the material. Number two, the second reason that you're losing your audience by talking too much is because you don't know what you want. And so when you stand up in front of people and you don't really know what you want out of this presentation, out of this time together, then what happens is your talk tends to meander because subconsciously you're trying to figure out what's the point of all this? What do I want out of this? And so you start to talk in ways that follow all kinds of rabbit trails and you kind of meander and your presentation can lack focus because you really don't know what you want out of it. I used to go to church and I remember a pastor that I used to have and boy, he definitely figured out a way to take a 10-minute talk and turn it into 75 minutes of meandering story time, rabbit trails, all kinds of things. And I really think he really didn't know where he was going. So know what you want before you stand up in front of anybody and give a presentation. It's helpful to write down this statement. I want blank to blank. The first blank is your audience. I want my boss. I want the audience. I want my client. Fill in the blank with who it is. I want them to, what do you want them to do as a result of your presentation? I want them to buy. I want them to agree. I want them to learn. Whatever it is, you've got to be very clear about that so that you don't use so many words to try to explain something that you haven't understood or articulated beforehand. Number three, the third reason that you might be talking too much is that you don't know what they want. And because you don't know what they want, you give them everything, hoping that they'll get something. And the problem with that is you end up talking way too much to communicate something that could be so much more simple. So take the time ahead of time to figure out, what do they want? And here's a little statement you can use. They want me to blank. You have these people that are your audience. They're coming to hear you speak. They agreed to take the meeting. What do they want from you? When you can articulate that, then your presentation will have focus and you won't lose your audience. Number four, the fourth reason that you might be talking too much is that you don't know what to do with the time. So you were scheduled to give a talk or a presentation and you were given 30 minutes to give your talk or your presentation, and you think to yourself, oh my goodness, what am I going to do for 30 minutes? I've only got 5 minutes of material. And so you think you have to fill 30 minutes of time. And so you take 5 minutes of material that's focused and pointed and important and meaningful, and you stretch it out to 30 minutes with all kinds of words and stories and data and whatever else you want to fill the time with. And when you do that, you completely lose your audience. So be a hero. Cut the meeting short. If you're given 30 minutes to talk and you've got 10 minutes of material, let your meeting be 10 minutes long. Don't talk just to fill the time. Number 5, the 5th reason that you might be talking too much is that you don't know what to do with all your extra material. Again, you've done a lot of study and research to put your presentation together. And let's say that your goal is to fill 18 minutes. And so you map it all out and you realize that in 18 minutes, you're not going to be able to give your main point, to emphasize your main point, to close with your main point, and give all of the data and research and slides and all the studies and all of the stories and examples, all of the other things that your research has led you to include in the presentation. And because you don't know what to do with all the extra information, the tendency is to want to give it all out and talk way too much. So here's a suggestion. Offer all of your supporting material somewhere else. Let your audience know that after the presentation, you're happy to stick around for a Q&A session. Or maybe you have some printed materials that you could hand out that includes all of the information that supports your presentation. Or maybe you give them a website address that leads them online where they can find all of your research and all the studies that support what you just said. The mistake that people make is that they feel like they've done all this work to put all of this information together, and for goodness sakes, my people are going to get it. And so you give everything and you talk way too much and you can lose your audience that way. Number 6, the 6th reason that you're talking too much and you're losing your audience is that you don't know what people tend to remember. Because you may not know how people tend to remember things, you might be tempted to think to yourself, well, I'm not responsible for what they remember, so I'm just going to put it all out there, and then they can make a note of the things that they need to remember. And so what happens is you get up and you talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, and your people remember nothing because you didn't take it as your responsibility to make sure that they remember what you want them to remember. So here's what you do. Get to the point. What do you want them to remember? If that's your point, get to it immediately. And then talk about your point. And then finish with your point. And if they forget anything, let them forget all the data and the stories and all the other stuff that you put in there to fill up some time maybe. But don't let them forget about the point or the headline. Take responsibility for what they remember. And they're only going to remember it if you emphasize it. Number 7. Another reason that you might be losing your audience because you're talking too much is because you don't know how people engage. And if you just take a moment to think of those times when you are sitting in the audience and you're listening to somebody talk, kind of like what you're doing now, think about how you like to be engaged. Think about all the things that you remember about good presentations and all the presentations that you sat through that you can't remember a thing about. When you can put yourself in those shoes, you'll know that people don't engage with tons of information. A lot of times we get up in front of people and we want them to be impressed with us, and for good reason, right? Nobody wants to be an idiot, a bumbling idiot on stage or in front of a group of people. And so you want to be liked, you want to be respected, you want people to to tie into the work that you did and all the research that you did to have the ability to stand where you are today. And so because we think we have to give them all of the research and data and study that we did and put into the presentation. And so instead of having 1 or 2 main points that we want people to remember, we tend to have an outline that's way too long. And letter A, letter B, letter C, and number 1, and subpoint this, and it's just too much. And people don't engage with that. So here's what you do. Have one thing that you want to get across. State that one thing. Let everything in the middle support that one thing from different directions. and then end with that one thing. I'll give you an example. That's what I'm doing right now. I have 10 points here, but I don't expect you to remember all 10 points. What I want you to remember is that you're talking too much. These 10 points support the fact that you might be talking too much. I'm not giving you 15 reasons why you're losing your audience. I'm giving you one reason, and that's that you're talking too much. And these 10 points are reasons that you might be talking too much. So let your presentation be about simplicity. The simpler it is, the more profound it is, and the more of an impact it'll make. All right, number 8. The 8th reason that you might be talking too much and losing your audience is that you don't know how people are impressed. Again, you stand up and you want people to be impressed with you in some positive way, and you think that by saying more and giving more and talking more about the technicalities and the research and the study and everything that it took for you to get to this point, you think that's going to impress people. Flip it around for a minute. How many times have you been impressed because somebody stood up and lectured for 60 minutes about all the data and study and research they did to get to some point that they're telling you about in that moment? Probably not very impressed at all. People don't care how much you know. Here's the question. What's in it for them? When you can answer before you ever get up on stage, or before you ever get up in front of the conference table and talk to your team of people, or before you ever stand up to do the sales pitch in front of somebody, if you can, in your mind, clarify and crystallize what they want, what's in it for them, then all of what you say will be focused around this, and you won't use a lot of words that don't feed that result. Number 9. The 9th reason you might be talking too much and losing your audience is that you don't know how to finish. Now, I've been guilty of this before. I've been public speaking my entire adult career. And for a long, long time, I put all of my effort and all of my energy and all of my work into coming up with my presentation. And I have my opening down, and I have my outline down, and I know all the examples and the stories I'm going to use to support what I want to say. And the last thing that I really want to do after I've expended all that energy is to spend even more time trying to figure out how I'm going to finish. And so what I would do is I would stand up on stage and I would talk for some length of time, and in my head I would all of a sudden get to a point where I'd panic. Oh, I've got to finish. It's time to stop. I've said what I wanted to say, but now I don't know how to finish. I don't know how to stop. I don't know how to conclude in a way that seems right, except to say, that's it, folks, bye, and walk off, right? And so when you don't know how to finish, what happens is you tend to ramble at the end. And the rambling is kind of your brain trying to tie everything together and trying to figure out how to exit with some dignity, right? Look, know what you want to say at the end. Spend time crafting that important ending in 1 or 2 breaths. It's very important. And as much work as you put into your opening and into your outline, you should put at least that much work, if not more, into your finish, and so that you know when to finish and how to do it. There's a bee flying around my head. I'm in my man cave right now, and so that happens. All right. And number 10. I feel like David Letterman here. The 10th reason you're talking too much and losing your audience is because you just don't know any better. You spent your career listening to other people who talk too much and were losing you as their audience. And now that it's your turn, you don't have any other model to follow. You just don't know any better. I just want you to know that focused equals impact. When you can focus your presentation, when you can laser point a talk towards something that you want, towards something that they want, towards something that you want them to remember, and you say it, and you've chosen your words carefully, and you're not rambling, and you're not trying to give 100 points. You're just giving 1 point, and you're supporting that point with data and research that makes sense. But when you're doing all those things and you're focused, you're laser focused on that, and you know how to end, and you've spent as much time working on your ending as you did your beginning, when all those things come into play and your talk is focused and you're not using words just to talk and you're not talking too much, you are going to make an impact. People are going to remember you. They're going to remember what you say. Thank you for joining me today on Leadership Evolution. Leave your comments in the section below, because I love to engage with people when they have questions, or maybe you can think of something that I haven't said. Maybe you have a number 11 or 12 that we could add to this list. Please let me know. I will be sure to engage with you and have that conversation with you. In the meantime, I'm really thankful that you guys spent some time with me today, and I will see you in the next video.